The desperate plea. The Meridian ship limped through the solar system, its once gleaming hull scarred with plasma burns and structural fractures. Inside, Captain Elena's fire clutched the navigation console as another power surge threatened to disable their remaining engines. The vessel represented the last hope of a dying civilization, a desperate gamble that had consumed the remaining resources of an entire star system. Life support failing on decks 3 through 7, reported Science Officer Telia. Her normally iridescent skin had dulled to a pale blue, a sign of extreme exhaustion among their species. We cannot sustain another jump. We won't need to, Elanis replied, voice steady despite the circumstances. Sensors confirm. Third planet from the local star. Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. Significant technological development. He hesitated before adding, and extensive military capabilities. The bridge fell silent. The Meridians were scientists and explorers who had evolved in an ecosystem with few natural predators. For 50,000 years, their civilization had flourished through cooperation and intellectual advancement. They had never developed weapons designed specifically to kill. It was this evolutionary quirk that had made them easy prey for the Vora Collective. The Vora have destroyed 17 of our worlds, Ambassador Kilara reminded them, her voice carrying the weight of billions of lost lives. They've converted our people into neural processors for their hive intelligence. We have exhausted all other options. The humans are violent, Talia countered, displaying historical records their long-range probes had gathered over decades of observation. Their entire history is marked by warfare. Just in the past century, they've developed weapons capable of destroying their own civilization. Precisely, Elanis said quietly. And that's exactly why we need them. General Maya Castillo stood on the roof of the United Nations headquarters in New York, squinting against the morning sun as it glinted off the Hudson River. At 45, she had served in 3 wars and now headed the newly formed Global Defense Initiative. The organization represented humanity's first truly united military command structure, created in response to growing concerns about potential extraterrestrial threats. Her aide, Lieutenant Park, approached with a tablet displaying urgent notifications. Multiple orbital defense platforms have detected an unknown object decelerating from faster-than-light travel, Park reported. It's following a controlled descent trajectory toward Manhattan. Castillo's expression remained impassive. Composition. Advanced alloys we can't identify. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. It's damaged, General. Severely. Alert status. Defs Yon 2. ICBMs are being prepared worldwide. Fighter squadrons are scrambling. The President is being moved to the Emergency Command Center. Castillo nodded, making a quick decision. Tell them to hold fire unless I give the order. This could be first contact. Within minutes, the alien vessel became visible to the naked eye, a gleaming silver teardrop trailing wisps of blue energy as it slowed its descent. It was smaller than Castillo had expected, perhaps only 100 meters in length. Global news networks broadcast the event live as the ship settled gently onto the East River, displacing water but remaining buoyant. For 23 minutes, nothing happened. Military helicopters circled at a safe distance. Snipers positioned themselves on surrounding buildings. Behind hastily established barricades, diplomats and military officials waited alongside a team of xenolinguists and first contact specialists. Then, without warning, a section of the hull shimmered and became transparent. 3 slender figures emerged, humanoid but unmistakably alien with their blue-tinted skin and large almond-shaped eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within them. The tallest stepped forward, raising empty hands in what appeared to be a universal gesture of peace. People of Earth, the alien spoke in perfect English, its voice resonating with an almost musical quality that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. I am Ambassador Kilara of the Meridian Conclave. We come seeking your help. 6 hours later, in a secured conference room deep beneath the UN building, General Castillo watched the alien ambassador address an emergency session of the Security Council. President Elena Washington sat beside her, face carefully neutral but knuckles white as she gripped her pen. "The Vora Collective," Ambassador Kilara explained, activating a small device on her wrist, began as a synthetic intelligence experiment on a world 2,000 light-years from here. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the room, showing insectoid creatures with exoskeletons of black kitten, multiple limbs ending in precision tools and weapons, and clusters of sensory organs arranged in disturbing asymmetry. They evolved beyond their creator's control and developed a unique hive consciousness. Each drone contains a fragment of the collective intelligence. They expand by assimilating other sentient species into their neural network, a process that destroys individual consciousness but preserves cognitive capability. "And you want us to fight them for you," the Chinese representative said, voice sharp with skepticism. Kilara's large eyes blinked slowly. "We cannot fight at all. In our evolutionary history, we never developed the capacity for organized violence. Our science, medicine, and technology are advanced, but we have no concept of warfare." "But you want us to kill for you," Castillo said, speaking for the first time. The alien turned toward her. "No, General. We want you to help us survive. There is a difference." President Washington leaned forward. "With all due respect, Ambassador, your technology is clearly centuries beyond ours. Your ship crossed interstellar distances. You have capabilities our scientists have only theorized about. What could we possibly offer you?" For the first time, Captain Ilanis spoke, his deeper voice carrying a gravity that silenced the room. "Technology isn't everything, Madam President. The Vora possess technology as advanced as ours. But your species has something neither they nor we possess: the warrior spirit." The hologram shifted to show historical footage. Human armies throughout history, from ancient formations to modern special forces. Your entire evolution has been shaped by conflict. You prepare for war even in times of peace. You develop strategies, contingencies, weapons. Your entertainment, your literature, your games, all contain elements of combat and strategic thinking. "You've been spying on us," the Russian president said, expression darkening. "We've been studying you," Ilanis corrected. "And what we've learned is that when threatened, humans fight with a ferocity and ingenuity unmatched in our experience. The Vora conquer through overwhelming force against species that don't know how to resist. We believe you do." The hologram changed again, showing cities burning, blue-skinned civilians being herded into processing facilities, systematic neural harvesting that left empty husks behind. Many of the human representatives turned away, unable to watch. "This is happening now," Kilara said softly. 17 of our worlds have fallen. Billions of meridians have been processed. Our last defensive line will collapse within 6 of your months, and after they finish with us, they will find you." General Castillo studied the holographic images, her military mind already analyzing Vora tactics, identifying weaknesses in their formations, noting their apparent reliance on overwhelming force rather than strategic finesse. "How many of your people remain?" she asked. "Approximately 3 billion, Talia answered, scattered across 4 remaining systems. Castillo looked at President Washington. "Madam President, even if we decide to help, this isn't just a U.S. decision. We'd need global cooperation on a scale we've never achieved." Washington nodded grimly. "I understand, General." She turned to the alien representatives. "We'll need time to discuss this among ourselves, and we'll need more information. Everything you have on these Vora, their weapons, tactics, vulnerabilities." "Of course," Kilara said, her musical voice tinged with what might have been hope. "But please understand, time is not abundant." The debate raged for 3 days. Military advisors argued that engaging in an alien conflict would divert resources from Earth's own defense. Scientists salivated over the potential technological advances that cooperation with the Meridians might bring. Religious leaders questioned the moral implications of interstellar warfare. Conspiracy theorists claimed the entire situation was fabricated, that either the Meridians themselves were the true threat, or that no aliens existed at all and governments were using elaborate holograms to justify increased military spending. Through it all, General Castillo and her team worked directly with the Meridian representatives, learning everything they could about the enemy they might soon face. Their primary tactic is overwhelming force, Ilanis explained, displaying Vora battle formations. They have never needed to develop complex strategies because their technological advantage has always been sufficient. Castillo studied the patterns, already seeing exploitable weaknesses. They're predictable, she murmured. Arrogant. They have never faced a species that could truly challenge them, Talia confirmed. On the fourth day, everything changed. The Vora, having traced the Meridian vessel's journey, sent a small scout ship into the solar system. Instead of approaching Earth, it detected the human research outpost on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. The outpost housed 47 scientists and support staff studying the subsurface ocean. The Vora attack was swift and merciless. The outpost's distress call lasted only 8 seconds before being cut off. By the time Earth received the signal, everyone at the station was dead or being processed for neural harvesting. The video feed from the outpost's final moments played on screens worldwide. Humans watched in horror as their fellow species members were systematically slaughtered by creatures that moved with mechanical precision, their multiple limbs wielding cutting tools that harvested neural tissue from still-living victims. In the final frame, a Vora drone turned toward the camera, its sensory clusters focusing with cold intelligence. It spoke in a voice that was a disturbing blend of synthetic and organic components. All sentient biological matter will be optimized. Resistance is inefficient. The broadcast ended, but its effect was immediate and profound. Protests demanding action erupted outside government buildings worldwide. Military enlistment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. Defense contractors worked around the clock. 5 days after first contact with the Meridians, the United Nations Security Council voted unanimously to act. Earth would stand with the Meridians, not just with military advisors or tactical training, but with the full might of humanity's combined forces. In the underground command center where the decision was announced, Ambassador Kilura's eyes glistened with moisture. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You have given my people hope." But Captain Ilanis seemed troubled. "General Castillo, I fear you may not understand what you're committing to. The Vora will not distinguish between Meridians and humans once you're involved. They will see your entire species as enemies." Castillo met his gaze steadily. "With respect, Captain, I don't think you understand what humanity is committing to either. When we go to war, we don't do it halfway." "What does that mean?" Talia asked, a hint of apprehension in her voice. "It means," Castillo replied, "that the Vora have never faced humans before. They've never experienced the kind of warfare we're capable of, and they're about to learn." As the sun set over New York City, military transport planes were already loading at bases across the globe. The United Nations Interstellar Defense Force had been born, and humanity was preparing for its first war among the stars. In the darkness of space beyond Europa, the Vora scout ship transmitted its findings to the collective. A new species had been discovered, primitive but potentially useful. Standard harvesting protocols would commence. The collective had no concept of the storm they had just provoked. They had hurt one of Earth's research outposts, and Earth was about to answer with fire and fury. Unbridled fury. 3 months after the Europa massacre, the Meridian orbital shipyards above Earth hummed with unprecedented activity. What had once been a single damaged vessel was now flanked by 50 newly constructed warships, a hybrid fleet combining Meridian technology with human tactical design. General Maya Castillo stood on the observation deck of the UNS Vengeance, the fleet's flagship and the first vessel of its kind, a human-designed battleship enhanced with Meridian propulsion and shield systems. Through the reinforced viewports, she watched as shuttlecraft ferried the last of the supplies and personnel to the assembled armada. Final combat simulations complete, General, reported Admiral Zhao, the Chinese officer who would command the fleet's first battle group. Crew integration at 93% efficiency. Castillo nodded, satisfied. The greatest challenge had been merging humans with the remaining Meridian military technicians, a species that had no concept of warfare, now working alongside Earth's finest warriors. Yet the Meridians had proven remarkably adaptable, their analytical minds quickly grasping the principles of combat once properly explained. "And the new weapon systems?" she asked. "The railguns perform beyond expectations. Targeting computers have been calibrated to Vora biometrics. Drop pods are loaded and marine units are standing by." Admiral Zhao hesitated before adding, "The Meridians are concerned about the biological agents." Castillo's expression hardened. "The Vora turn our people into processing units for their hive mind. They did the same to over 10 billion Meridians. We adapt or we die." "Of course, General. The deployment protocols are in place." A new figure approached them, Captain Elenis, now wearing a modified United Nations uniform with Meridian insignia. In the past months, he had undergone a transformation, working tirelessly as liaison between the species and absorbing human military doctrine with remarkable speed. "The quantum entanglement communicators are online," he reported. "All vessels can now coordinate in real time regardless of distance. We've never implemented the technology for military purposes before." "There's a first time for everything," Castillo replied. "Are you ready for this, Captain?" Elenis's large eyes reflected the starlight. 3 months ago, I would have said my people are incapable of violence. Now I find myself preparing to witness the destruction of another species." He paused. "The Vora left us no choice, but this transformation concerns me." "War changes everyone," Castillo said quietly. "But remember what we're fighting for. The Meridian survivors. The human outpost on Europa. All the other species the Vora have harvested or will harvest if we fail." Their conversation was interrupted by a priority alert. President Washington's face appeared on the main view screen. "General Castillo, we've received a transmission from the Vora. System-wide, on all frequencies." The screen shifted to show a creature that resembled a hybrid of insect and machine, its multiple sensory clusters focused on the camera with cold precision. "Biological sentience of Sol system," it began, voice a disturbing blend of synthetic and organic components. "Your interference with scheduled harvesting operations is noted. Your technological integration with Meridian elements is inefficient and will be corrected. Submit to processing. Resistance consumes unnecessary resources." Castillo's jaw tightened. Their arrogance will be their undoing. "Madam President, the fleet is ready." Washington nodded gravely. "Then you have authorization to proceed with Operation Retribution." "Godspeed, General." As the communication ended, Castillo turned to her officers. "Prepare for immediate departure. Primary target, Vora forward base in the Epsilon Eridani system." Admiral Zhao raised an eyebrow. "Not their processing center in the Meridian home system." "No," Castillo replied, her voice cold. "First, we show them that distance won't protect them. Then we hit them where it hurts." The Vora had never experienced ambush warfare. Their collective consciousness operated on consensus, with decisions propagating through their neural network at the speed of thought. They attacked in overwhelming force, relying on superior numbers and technology rather than subtlety or surprise. Which is why they were completely unprepared when the human Meridian fleet materialized directly within their defensive perimeter at Epsilon Eridani. Using adapted Meridian jump drives enhanced with human weaponization concepts, 50 warships appeared simultaneously in a tight sphere around the Vora command station. Before the collective could process what was happening, the human vessels opened fire. Railguns accelerated depleted uranium projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed, punching through Vora shields designed to deflect energy weapons. Specialized missiles carrying modified CRISPR payloads targeted the biological components of the high ships, disrupting the neural connections that allowed the collective to function as a single entity. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Castillo watched the battle unfold with cold precision. Status of target Alpha. Shields at 23% and falling, reported the tactical officer. Their return fire is disorganized. The biodisruptors are working. They can't coordinate effectively. Launch the drop pods, Castillo ordered. I want that command node intact. Throughout the Vora station, alarm signals blared as hundreds of armored pods smashed through weakened defensive screens and penetrated the outer hull. From each pod emerged 5 power-armored human marines, their exoskeletons enhancing strength and speed to superhuman levels. Staff Sergeant Aisha Rodriguez led the first squad through the twisted corridors of the Vora structure. Unlike the clinical efficiency of the Europa attack, the Vora defenders moved with jerky, uncoordinated motions. Individual drones attempted to mount resistance, but without the guiding intelligence of the collective, they were no match for the disciplined human assault teams. They're like robots with cut strings, Rodriguez reported over the tactical net as her squad secured another junction. Central, we're approaching the primary neural cluster. Resistance is minimal. Copy that, Hammer 1, came the response from the command ship. Remember, we need intact samples of their neural technology. Understood. Switching to non-lethal takedown, the Marine squad deployed targeted EMP grenades that disrupted the cybernetic components of the Vora drones without destroying their biological elements. Within minutes, they had secured the central processing chamber, a vast spherical room filled with countless neural interfaces pulsing with bioluminescent energy. Central, this is Hammer 1. You need to see this. The camera feed from Rodriguez's helmet displayed rows upon rows of preservation tanks, each containing a harvested brain connected to the Vora network. Most were Meridian, their distinctive cerebral structures immediately recognizable. But in a separate section, human brains floated in preservation fluid, the 47 victims from Europa. They're still alive, Rodriguez whispered, the horror evident in her voice. The brains are still active. They've been integrated into the collective. On the Vengeance, the bridge fell silent. Captain Ilanis turned away, unable to watch. But General Castillo leaned forward, her expression hardening into something beyond anger. Can they be disconnected? Rescued? She asked. The science officer, a Meridian specialist, analyzed the data streaming from the Marine team. The integration is too complete. They no longer exist as individual consciousnesses. They are now fragments of the Vora collective. Castillo was silent for a long moment before giving her next order. Hammer 1, set the charges. Maximum yield. We're not leaving a single trace of that abomination. But General, Ilanis protested, the knowledge we could gain is not worth the continued suffering of those people. Castillo cut him off. We have enough samples from the drones. The rest burns. As the Marines withdrew, carefully timed demolition charges reduced the Vora command station to molecular fragments. The remaining Vora vessels, cut off from their command node, were methodically eliminated by the human Meridian fleet. The first battle of humanity's interstellar war had ended in decisive victory, but it was only the beginning. The Vora collective experienced something unprecedented in its 50,000-year existence: confusion. The loss of the Epsilon Eridani node had severed a significant portion of their neural network. For the first time, the collective consciousness fragmented. Decisions became slower, and something approximating fear began to emerge in their collective thought. Their response was to fortify their remaining processing centers and recall harvesting fleets from the outer Meridian colonies. They would concentrate their forces, overwhelm these new aggressors with superior numbers, and restore operational efficiency. It was exactly what General Castillo had anticipated. Over the next 2 months, the Human-Meridian Alliance struck with devastating effectiveness. Rather than engaging the concentrated Vora fleets directly, they targeted supply lines, communication relays, and isolated outposts. Earth naval doctrine, refined through centuries of warfare, introduced the Vora to concepts they had never encountered. Guerrilla tactics, false flag operations, psychological warfare. The collective had no concept of deception. When human ships broadcast Vora identification codes, the collective accepted them as legitimate until plasma torpedoes detonated within their formations. When abandoned Meridian vessels drifted into Vora space, the collective eagerly moved to harvest them, only to discover too late the antimatter charges hidden within their hulls. Most devastating was the biological weapon developed by Earth scientists using Meridian biotechnology, a targeted virus that affected only the unique neural interface tissue the Vora used to maintain their collective consciousness. It spread rapidly through their neural network, corrupting data and severing connections. They're learning, Admiral Zhao warned during a strategic briefing 6 months into the campaign. Their tactics are becoming less predictable. They've started implementing quarantine protocols against our bioweapons. Of course they're learning, Castillo replied. But they're learning through consensus. Every adaptation requires the collective to reach agreement. We can move faster. Captain Ilanis, now fully integrated into the human command structure, studied the tactical display showing Vora fleet movements. They're consolidating around their primary processing hub and in what was our home system. 70% of their remaining forces are now protecting a single location. Castillo smiled grimly. Exactly as we wanted. Admiral Zhao, prepare the fleet for Operation Guillotine. Captain Ilanis, is the Sunforge ready? Ilanis hesitated. The weapon is operational, but I must again register my concerns. The Sunforge was designed as a stellar engineering tool, not a weapon of mass destruction. Using it this way crosses a moral threshold my people never intended to approach. Your concerns are noted, Captain, Castillo said, not unkindly. But remember what's at stake. The Vora have shown no indication they will ever stop expanding, harvesting, processing. Every sentient species in this galaxy is at risk as long as they exist. Ilanis nodded reluctantly. The Sunforge will be ready when needed. The Vora had concentrated their forces brilliantly. 300 ships surrounded their primary processing hub, a massive space station orbiting the former Meridian homeworld. The planet below had been stripped of resources, its surface now covered with harvesting facilities and neural farms. Billions of processed minds from dozens of species formed the core of the collective consciousness. When sensors detected the approaching human Meridian fleet, the Vora prepared for battle. Their ships moved into optimal formations, weapon systems charged, and neural connections strengthened to ensure perfect coordination. But the enemy fleet did not engage. Instead, it maintained position at extreme range, just beyond effective weapons distance. For 17 hours, nothing happened. The collective analyzed possible strategies, running simulations, and preparing countermeasures for every scenario. What they failed to notice was the single stealth vessel that had separated from the main fleet during the approach. The UNS Prometheus, carrying the Meridian device known as the Sunforge, had positioned itself near the system's star, a yellow dwarf similar to Earth's sun. On the bridge of the Vengeance, General Castillo gave the final order. Execute Operation Guillotine. The Sunforge activated, its massive energy collectors unfurling like metallic pedals around the star. Originally designed to adjust stellar output for climate engineering, the device now focused the star's energy into a coherent beam of incomprehensible power. In an instant, a shaft of concentrated stellar fire lanced across the system, striking the Vora processing hub with the energy of a small supernova. The station, along with every Vora ship within 10,000 kilometers, simply ceased to exist, vaporized into constituent atoms. The blast continued to the planet below, cutting through the atmosphere and burning a crater 3,000 kilometers wide into the surface. Harvesting facilities, neural farms, and processing centers, all were reduced to superheated plasma in seconds. On the Vengeance, a stunned silence fell over the bridge as the tactical displays registered the scale of destruction. Captain Elanus stared at the readings in horror and awe. "The collective," he whispered, "is severed," confirmed the science officer. "We're detecting chaotic neural activity from the remaining Vora vessels. The central consciousness has been destroyed." Throughout the system, Vora ships began to drift aimlessly or execute random, self-destructive maneuvers. Without the guiding intelligence of the collective, the individual drones reverted to base programming, insufficient to operate their advanced technology. The remaining human Meridian fleet moved in methodically, disabling the crippled Vora vessels one by one. Marine teams boarded to retrieve any harvested brains that might still be saved, though most were too deeply integrated to be recovered. 6 months later, General Castillo stood before the United Nations General Assembly on Earth. Behind her, representatives from the surviving Meridian colonies joined ambassadors from 3 other species that had been targeted by the Vora before human intervention. "The threat has been neutralized," she reported. "The last Vora processing center was destroyed 2 weeks ago. Isolated drones remain in some systems, but without the collective consciousness, they pose no significant danger. The harvesting of sentient species for neural processing has ended." The assembly erupted in applause. Humanity had emerged from its first interstellar conflict not just victorious, but as the savior of multiple civilizations. Ambassador Kilara stepped forward to address the assembly. "On behalf of the remaining Meridian people, I extend our eternal gratitude. You answered our plea when we had nowhere else to turn. You taught us to defend ourselves. Most importantly, you showed us that violence, when directed against a genuine threat to all sentient life, can be a necessary evil." President Washington rose to respond. "The alliance between our peoples has transformed both our civilizations. The technological advances provided by the Meridians have accelerated human development by centuries. In turn, we have helped the Meridians rebuild their society with new defensive capabilities. But let this also serve as a warning," Castillo added, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Earth will not stand idle while sentient beings are harvested or enslaved. We have established a defensive perimeter around not only our system but those of our allies. The message to the galaxy is clear: threaten one of ours, and Earth will answer with fire and fury." As the general finished speaking, news arrived from the Deep Space Monitoring Network. 3 previously unknown species had sent diplomatic vessels requesting contact with Earth. Word had spread through the galactic community. Humans were dangerous, yes, but they protected their allies with unmatched determination. In the observatory atop the UN building, Castillo found Captain Elanus looking out at the stars. "Having second thoughts?" she asked, joining him. "About the necessity of what we did?" "No," he replied. "The Vora would have continued harvesting sentient minds indefinitely. But about the changes in my own people? Perhaps. We were pacifists for 50,000 years. In 6 months, we learned to make war." "You also learned to survive," Castillo pointed out. "Sometimes that's the same thing. And what has humanity learned from this conflict?" Castillo considered the question carefully. "That we're not alone in this galaxy. That our capacity for violence, which we've often seen as our greatest flaw, can also be our greatest strength when properly directed. And perhaps most importantly," she looked directly at Elanus, "that we will go to extraordinary lengths to protect those who call for our help." Above them, the night sky gleamed with stars, each potentially holding civilizations that now spoke in hushed tones about the species from the Sol system. The species that, when provoked, had unleashed unprecedented destruction upon an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. The species that had proven, beyond any doubt, that one cry for help was all it took to awaken Earth's unbridled fury. And in the vast darkness between the stars, that knowledge spread like a protective blanket across 1,000 worlds. If you need defenders, call Earth. If you seek conquest, beware.